12 years ago, Izuku lay in the woods, burns on his skin after another beating from his one-time best friend, Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku did not want the pain to come back if he moved again. As he lay there, he cursed the world he was born into. All because he was born without a quirk. If only he had a quirk, he'd have shown Bakugo a reason to fear him. These were the thoughts that went through Izuku's mind before he blacked out from the pain. In Izuku's mind, when Izuku's eyes opened again, the first thing he noticed was that the pain was gone. Then he also noticed he was in a throne room of some kind. Large stone columns with gold trim along the roof and a huge gold chandelier. Izuku stooped, turned his head, and saw a throne with a man sitting on it. He had shadow-like armor on. It was black and purple. He stood up, and he was tall. With a handsome face, women would love to see. He was also muscular with gray eyes, sharp facial features, and black hair with bangs that dangled down to his eyes. His eyes were glowing purple, with a smirk on his face. The man walked right up to Izuku and hummed as he looked down at him. I see. Izuku looked at him as he kneeled and looked into his eyes. So this is my reincarnation. Granted, this me will be so much more dark than I was. To think that my reincarnation was the weakest again, even in another dimension. Well, I guess I can help and give you a few years of free growth. I'll give you 1% of my full power just so your body can start developing rapidly. But, I'll make all these seem like a dream. Make sure they fear the Shadow Monarch. Izuku, not knowing what he was talking about, watched as he placed his right hand on his head. Once he did, Izuku blacked out. Present time. Izuku sighed as he stood up from his bed and smiled when he saw himself in the mirror. He was tall for his age, standing at a height of 6'7", and his well-muscled frame was the envy of many his age, with a few faded scars on his face. As he looked at himself, he couldn't help but think back on how he had rocked his school and the doctor when he suddenly had a quirk that everyone thought was an extreme, super physical enhancement quirk. He quickly became famous among everyone as he grew in power so rapidly that even before he asked, he had a recommendation for UA's hero course by heroes who'd seen him training. They all sent videos, and almost the whole nation knew about him. His power was so similar to All Might's that some people asked if they were related. Izuku laughed as he remembered how Bakugo was destroyed when the Deku crushed him in middle school. The Deku had crushed his hands, making his quirk misfires and destroying his hopes of being a hero. What made it worse for Bakugo was that he started the fight and it was recorded and it was clear he attacked him 3 times before he attacked back. Even when the pros and cops showed up at the school, Bakugo was arrested and sent to juvenile hall. He'd broken the law by attacking someone with his quirk with the intent to kill, given how he talked. Izuku wished he'd gotten to take Bakugo's shadow, as his quirk was powerful, but he knew he'd have to kill him. But, Izuku had only killed the dungeon monsters from his earned keys. He had over 100 shadows from goblins, red wolves, and another humanoid monster. As well as 20 powerful quirk users. He wished to raise more of the bosses, but none were as strong as his knight. Flashback. 2 years ago. Izuku had just finished his daily quest. Izuku wiped his face off as a new blue screen appeared in front of his face. Along with the normal rewards, there was a weapon reward. Raisin's blade. Izuku agreed to the rewards. Then, a sword appeared in his right hand. It was warm to the touch. Izuku looked at the description. Raisin's blade is made by sharpening the enchanted horn that shoots up from a raisin's back. You can feel the heat pulsing within as if fierce flames could erupt. It's a rare class weapon with a fire element, with an attack stat between 50 and 1100. Its HP was 50 to 1650. Its precision was from 0 to 1250. This sword feels good in the hand. But why did I get a weapon reward? Plus the E-rank keys. I have 10 of them now. What are they used for? Izuku summoned an E-rank key and looked at it. It was light purple and resembled a key from the 17th century. He sat it down and set the key down before he opened his stat screen. Level 7. HP 890. STR 70. MP 88. VIT 59. AGL 42. Int 90. Sense 30. Available points 40. Skills. Dash level 1. Izuku sighed before he put the sword in the inventory. Then he looked at the key and picked it up before he noticed a lock in the middle of his door. Izuku hummed before putting the key away, and the lock vanished. Okay. I should have guessed the keys would go to a lock. But they only show now. Is it because I have a weapon now? Izuku then looked back at the available points. Best to go ahead and use them. I can add 6 to each of my stats. I'm well above anyone my own age, and I've got experience from defeating the other people who tried to attack me with my self-defense quest. Izuku hummed as he closed the screen after putting the key away. Best not to play with something I don't understand. But I'll never know what happens if I don't take the risk. Izuku resummoned the key and his sword. Izuku walked over to the lock and inserted the key. Back to present. He'd torn his way through an E-ranked goblin dungeon. He killed the hobgoblin boss after almost 2 hours of fighting. He walked into that dungeon a level 7 and back out a level 12. With 2 new skills, Crushing Blow and Cutting Rush. He opened his stat. Level 42. HP 10,980. STR 750. MP 3310. Vit 489. AGL 392. Int 410. Sense 900. Available points 18. Skills. Dash level 5. Crushing Blow level 4. Cutting Rush level 6. Vital Strike level 4. Fatal Strike level 9. Mana Manipulation 10. After looking them over, the armor he had on. It was a set of leather armor that boosts his overall defense with added boosts to his MP and HP. He was glad it was invisible. Izuku also checked a few records of pro hero records. He hadn't fought against a pro hero, but he was sure that at this point, he could easily take a rookie pro hero. But a pro with a few years of real combat under their belt, it'd be a death match, that much he was sure of. And that villain he had to fight 2 weeks ago. Knock knock. Izuku. Dinner is ready. Izuku smiled, knowing his plan for his mother would start soon. He closed the screen as he readied himself for what he would do tonight. Okay mom, I'll be out in a minute. His voice was sweet, but what he had planned wasn't. He knew he'd have to use force initially but knew how to make her do what he wanted. He knew he was going down a dark path, but he long ago decided that this world would pay, and so would his mother. She only believed in him once she saw he had power. Now he was home for a week for summer vacation, and she'd taken a week off to be with him. He looked at a box he'd used a shadow with a portal quirk to gather items he would use this week. Before walking out, he grabbed a bag with a few small red pills in them. He laughed at how easy it was to get a date rape drug. At the same time, he used a goblin shadow to take the box to his mother's room. He wasn't going to break her on the first night. That would be no fun. He just wanted to plant a seed he'd work with. Well, best to get started. Izuku walked over to the door and opened it to see the small 2-bedroom apartment. He hid the small bag in his pocket. He'd been slowly moving the money he'd been making into his mother's hands. Getting the money into her bank account or extra cash into her purse was difficult. But now they had new furniture, better food, new clothes, and his secret purchases using his shadows. Izuku was something wrong. Izuku looked over at his mother and smiled as he looked at her. She was a little shorter than he was and was dressed in a t-shirt and jean shorts with large and circular eyes. Her hair and eyes are green but slightly darker than her son's. Her hair is straight and shoulder length, with a small and spiky ponytail at the back. Her chest was a large double D cup with a heart-shaped ass with thick hips. Izuku saw she had placed steaming tea on the table as she readied the plates. I quickly got a pill out and snapped it before he dropped half of it into his mother's cup. He didn't want her unresponsive. Izuku, come over and get your katsudon. Izuku smiled as he walked over and grabbed his large bowl of katsudon. He then walked back over to the table and sat down. They sat down and started to head, and Izuku smiled as he watched her take a drink of the tea. Izuku took a few bites of the food, and all he had to do was wait. About 20 minutes into the meal, he saw her looking dizzy and her face flushed. Smiling, Izuku set his chopsticks down and stood up. You look ready to fall asleep, mom. Why don't I help you to bed? Inko nodded as Izuku helped her and slowly walked her to her bedroom door. When he opened the door, he smiled when he saw the box at the foot of the bed. Izuku helped her onto the bed, and while she was still half out of hit, she ran his hand down her back. His hand grazed her ass, seeming to make her jump, but when she tried to look back, her head started to phase up again. Inko just figured she imagined it as if this was her sweet Izuku's son. There was no way her son would touch her butt. As she went to turn over, she froze as she felt a hand on her ass, and it tapped it a few times before it was pulled away. She turned to look at him, but her mind wouldn't clear up. She decided that she was just imagining, as she knew it had been quite some time since she had any attention like that. But she didn't notice her son push the box under her bed. Now, it was time for him to go and see his girlfriend Toga, who was waiting for him so they could go hunting. 1 hour later, Izuku pulled up at her family home on his blue Honda Gold Wing. A bike he'd bought using one of his shadows. He quickly got his jacket off, knowing Toga would want it anyway. Izuku looked up and saw shadows arguing in Toga's window. He saw Toga's hair bums on the smaller shadow. Izuku put the kickstand down, walked up to the front gate, and jumped over it. He was ready to fight since he knew Toga's family treated her like a demon because of her quirk. He looked back up and saw a larger shadow land a slap on the smaller shadow. Izuku got pissed and jumped up to the window and smashed it. Izuku landed in the room and saw Toga holding her right cheek on her knees and her father standing above her. Izuku looked at the father, and he started to shake, scared of what could happen. Izuku has been on the news for taking down villains when they attacked him for his bike. He'd crippled 4 of them and nearly killed the last one with a powerful punch to the side of the head. Oh fuck. Izuku-kun. Toga got up and rushed over to him, and he opened his arms. Toga quickly wrapped her arms around Izuku's chest, and he wrapped his right arm around her as she buried her head into his chest. Izuku frowned as he rubbed her back and looked at the father. Izuku smiled as he felt her double D cup pressed into his chest. Toga was 5'9" with a nice heart-shaped ass with well-toned hips. She was dressed in black jeans with a pair of sneakers on. Her shirt was crimson red, with an image of black knives on her chest. Around her neck was the blood-red choker he'd bought her on their last date. Izuku watched the father as he quickly got out of the room. Once he was gone, Izuku smiled as he looked down at her. Izuku, knowing that the father may call the cops, he picked Toga up like a bride and jumped out of the window. He then jumped over the wall. Haha. Izuku smiled a little more as he heard Toga's happy laugh. He pulled his coat over her shoulder, and Toga quickly got the coat on right. Then he bit down on his tongue and pulled her into a deep kiss. Toga, tasting the blood, moaned as she closed her eyes. His blood was helping with the craving for blood that was starting. Toga wrapped her arms around his neck as she started to drink the blood. Izuku picked her up by her hips, and they broke the kiss after a minute. A little blood is coming from the corner of his mouth. Toga pulled his face close again and licked the blood. Thanks, I needed the blood fix. Izuku nodded before he sat her down on the back of the bike. Izuku quickly got on and started up the bike. Toga got comfy and wrapped her arms around Izuku's chest. He started the bike, and Toga put her head on his right shoulder. So where are we hunting this time? Izuku laughed, knowing they were going to the black market again. You know we are going to the black market. I just wish the damn government would give aid to quirks like yours. Toga smiled as she looked forward. Can we get another hotel room after the hunt? He kicked the kickstand back up and started before he started to drive. Izuku turned his head and looked at her face. Maybe. But Toga, you know you just graduated. Do you think we should be doing that right now? What happens if you? Toga quickly kissed the side of his lips with a sweet smile on her face. I don't care. We've been together for 2 years, and it'd be nice not to have you run off early in the morning so my parents don't find out. Besides, today should be safe, so you don't have to use a condom. Izuku laughed a little, then he gave her another kiss before he started to drive. They raced down the streets, and Toga rubbed her hands on Izuku's chest. She could feel his hard chest muscles, and she moved her hands lower and felt the set of abs hidden under his shirt. It had been well over 3 weeks since she saw them last. She moved a hand from his chest and moved it to her crotch, and she felt her outer lips starting to get wet. She couldn't wait for Izuku to get her on her back. 1 hour later. Izuku pulled his sword from the female villain's chest and grabbed her by the hair as she tried to fall. Blood. More blood. Toga ran over with a large jug Izuku had pulled out of his inventory, where he stored all of Toga's blood. He did this as it cleaned all her blood to keep her safe when she needed it. He'd long since explained his power to her after he saved her back when she was a first year. Izuku then sent his sword back and summoned Night Slayer. One of 2 daggers he only used to kill those knights in the dungeon boss. He hid it behind his back, and Toga looked up at him as the blood slowed down from coming out. I ended up taking the kill anyways. I got you a gift. Toga didn't care about the kill, knowing her boyfriend had gotten her something again. He pulled Night Killer out from behind his back. Her eyes shined as she looked at the dagger. She also knew it must come from the shop he told her about. It's called Kint Killer. Toga looked at her new toy with a smile. She threw the body aside and quickly took the dagger to look it over. It was a sleek and deadly blade that was sharp and elegantly curved. The blade is crafted dark material that gleams with a sinister, almost otherworldly light. It exudes an aura of lethality and precision, making it clear that it is a weapon designed for deadly efficiency. The blade's edge is razor sharp, honed to perfection for slicing through even the toughest armor. Its sharpness is emphasized by a faint, shimmering outline that suggests a supernatural enhancement. The hilt of the Night Killer is ergonomically designed for a perfect grip, allowing it to be wielded with maximum control and agility. It is wrapped in a dark, leather-like material that provides comfort and a non-slip surface during combat. The guard of the dagger is minimalist yet effective, designed to protect the wielder's hand from slipping onto the blade during intense fights. It is sleek and seamlessly integrated into the overall design of the weapon. The Night Killer has a dark and menacing aesthetic, reflecting its purpose as a weapon of assassination and precision. It combines elements of beauty and danger, making it both an awe-inspiring and fearsome sight. I love it. Toga threw her arms up and down a few times before Izuku grabbed the large jug and sent it into the inventory. He summoned a belt sheath for her, and she quickly sheathed the Night Slayer and put it on before jumping on Izuku. She wrapped her legs around Izuku's waist and pulled him into another kiss. Izuku grabbed her ass, holding her up as she assaulted his mouth. Izuku quickly broke the kiss and spoke. We need to go. Heroes will be coming soon. Toga groaned as she rubbed her thighs into his sides. Izuku made her get down as he resummoned his bike. They quickly got on and started the bike. They rushed off to the closest hotel. They pulled up to a love hotel 20 minutes later. Toga jumped off the back of the bike. She pulled out the small stack of cash Izuku kept in his jacket. Izuku got off his bike, took the key, and followed Toga into the hotel. Once inside, Toga quickly grabbed his shirt and pulled him to the elevator. I paid for a whole night so I don't want to walk out of here tomorrow morning. Izuku laughed and saw a young mutant woman who looked like a wolf. She waved as she looked at him. Toga pulled him into the elevator, and Izuku slammed her into the wall as soon as the door closed. Izuku grabbed her wrist as he moved on her neck and dragged his canines on her skin. Toga's legs shook at the stimulation. Izuku moved to her lips and pressed his body more into her as he started to kiss her. Toga was happy to let Izuku dominate her. Ding! Hearing that sound, Izuku pulled back, and Toga groaned as he pulled away. She had to wait 3 weeks before she got to have sex because of Izuku's high school exams. Izuku grabbed her hand and took the card from her hand. He looked down and saw the door number was 305. They rushed down to the door and Izuku opened the door. Izuku walked over to the bed and sat down as soon as they were in. Toga, knowing what he liked, slowly started to strip. Lemon start. Izuku smiled as Toga threw his coat aside and reached for her shirt. She slowly pulled it off, and her top and breasts bounced free. Izuku wasn't surprised, as he knew she didn't like to wear bras. She then moved her hands along her body as she kicked off her sneakers. She unbuttoned her jeans, pulled them down, and removed her socks. She stood there with just her red and black lace thong. Izuku smiled as he stood and pulled his shirt off before Toag tackled him back onto the bed. After a little struggle, Izuku flipped them and held her down by her wrist, seeing the blush on her face. Oh, I've waited for this. Izuku smiled as he leaned down and kissed her neck below the choker. He slowly started to work his way down her neck as he dragged his hands down her arms. Toga moaned as Izuku kissed the center of her chest and then moved to her left nipple. Toga groaned as her legs moved around, loving how he was playing with her body. Izuku to her other nipple, giving it the same attention as he moved his hands to her waist. Izuku went lower and kissed her stomach just above her thong. When he leaned back up, he saw her thong had a large wet spot on the center. He smiled as he pulled her thong off and saw her soaked outer lips. Izuku threw her thong to the side and looked back at Toga. He smiled as he ran a hand in her inner thigh. "I never get tired of seeing how beautiful you are, Toga." Toga moaned as Izuku moved his hand along her outer lips. She spread her legs to give Izuku more access to her flower. With his other hand, he undid his belt and got his pants and boxers off. When Toga saw his 10-inch long, 2-inch wide bitch break pop free, she smiled wide. Izuku grabbed her hips, pulled her down to the foot of the bed, and turned her onto her side. Izuku knew she loved this position the most. He lined up with her opening, and with a violent thrust, he rammed more than halfway in, and Toga screamed with a huge smile on her face. Her tongue fell out of her mouth, and Izuku knew she loved it when he was rough with her. Izuku forced the rest of the way in, and the tip smacked into her cervix. Izuku smiled as he held her leg to his chest and leaned down as he started to thrust into her. He planted his other hand on the bed as he thrusted. Toga grabbed on Izuku's forearm as he thrusted. "H harder, Izuku-kun." Izuku smiled as he pulled his arm free and wrapped it around her waist. Izuku picked her up and grabbed her ass. Toga wrapped her legs around Izuku's waist as he fucked her and started another kiss, moaning as Izuku used her as a way to pleasure himself. She didn't even care if that was how he saw her. He was the only person who'd cared when she needed it most. Toga was happy just to let him use her as he wanted. Soon, Toga broke the kiss and screamed as she felt her body giving her pleasure. Izuku smiled as he kept thrusted into Toga, prolonging her orgasm as he felt his orgasm coming. "Toga, I'm getting close. Are you sure about letting me come inside?" Izuku may be a killer and much more like a villain, but he still loved his bloody queen. Toga's only response was to tighten her hold on his waist. Not needing to hear anything, Toga pulled him into another deep kiss. Soon, Izuku couldn't hold it anymore, and he slammed her down one last time and came inside her. Toga screamed into the kiss, and Izuku just held her too tight to his body. Lemon end. The two teenagers spent the next 4 hours fucking until Toga's legs finally gave out. Izuku, on his part, checked his fatigue and saw it was only at 20%. He laughed as a sleeping Toga snuggled into his side and wrapped an arm around her as he turned on his side. The next morning, Izuku pulled up at Toga's house and kissed her as she got off the bike. Toga's legs wobbled a little, but she walked up the gate with a smile. But her smile dropped when her code didn't work. She tried again, but it still didn't work. Izuku, seeing her having trouble, got off his bike and walked over to the gate. Seeing her about to type in her code again, the speaker crackled to life. "Leave. Toga, you are 19 now. You and your future villain boyfriend aren't welcome here. We're having your stuff moved into a storage unit later today. We'll call once it's done, and you can go and get it all. You'll have a month to collect them before you lose them. We left you a bag of clothes and an extra key to the storage unit around back at the garage." Izuku and Toga were shocked, and Toga had tears forming in her eyes. Izuku, on the other hand, was pissed and moved to the gate. He pulled his right up and kicked it in before Toga stopped him. "Izuku-kun, stop. If you break it down, it will set off an alarm to call the cops." Izuku stopped, a pissed off look on his face. He spit on the gate before Toga and Izuku got back on his back. He quickly pulled around the house, and Izuku's anger grew as he saw a trash bag with a key set on the top. Izuku quickly put the bag into his inventory, and Toga slipped the key into her pocket. Izuku growled as he looked at the house and planned payback for these fuckers. Izuku drove them back to his and his mother's apartment. They walked in, and Inko was surprised to see Toga again. She hadn't seen her for a few weeks, and she saw that she had been crying. Being a mother before everything else, she got her hands out of the sink water and rushed over. Izuku sighed as his mother quickly took Toga over to the couch and the two started to talk. Izuku walked to his room and saw it had been cleaned. His queen-sized bed was made, and the weapons he'd usually keep on his desk or wall were straightened up. He sighed as he walked over to his closet and got his coat off. He put it away before he heard 2 sets of footsteps. Izuku. Izuku looked back to see his mother with Toga behind her. Yeah. Inko smiled as she looked at her son. You did the right thing bringing her home with you and not attacking the gate. We'll house her for the time being even if she's girlfriend. I don't want you two going too crazy. I don't want any grandchildren until you're 18 at least. Izuku and Toga blushed as Izuku looked away from them. Izuku was a little annoyed that his plans for his mother wouldn't happen anymore. But his bloody queen needed this time so much more. Toga walked into his room, and Inko, knowing Toga needed him more than she did, walked away. Toga got onto Izuku's bed and laid her head on his pillows. Izuku smiled as he lay down and Toga quickly moved closer to him. She rested her head on his chest and wrapped an arm around his neck. Izuku huffed a laugh out as Toga used him as a body pillow. The week had gone by quickly, and Izuku liked waking up with Toga each morning. He found it nice to have someone to hold in his sleep. His mother had also found having another girl in the house nice. Toga would help with everything Inko asked and got a part-time job to help pay bills. Izuku and his mother had asked that she try to work from home, each knowing of her quirk and what would happen if she suddenly needed blood. Warmed by their worry, Toga did just that and found a small data entry job. Now Izuku was dressed in the UA uniform without the tie and his coat open since it was too tight on his frame. It also showed off his tight white shirt. You could see the defined muscles. Oh my. Izuku looked back and saw Toga wearing shorts and a pink tank top beside the door. She was comfortable at home now, and he smiled as he walked over. He gave her a quick kiss before he grabbed his key and backpack. I'll be back by 4. Take care of my mom. I left a jug of blood in the fridge for you. Togo smiled and kissed his cheek as he walked into the living room. He gave his mother a quick hug and then walked out the door. At UA, the students looked around the grounds since they didn't have to be in class until 8. In this large gathering of people was a group of 6 girls. These girls were the female students of Class 1A. Mina Ishido, Quirk Acid, Suyu Asui, Quirk Frog, Ochako Uraraka, Quirk Zero Gravity, Kyoka Jiro, Quirk Earphones, Toru Hagakuri, Quirk Invisibility, Yaoyorozu Momo, Quirk Creation. This group happily talked near the parking lot until the other students heard an engine roar. They all looked at the parking lot entrance and saw a larger man pulling in. But they were shocked to see he was wearing the UA uniform. The girls of 1A saw him pull into a parking spot nearby. They all blushed as they saw him up close, and they watched him as he got off the motorcycle. He was a massive 6'7" with such a great body, with his dark green hair pulled back into a ponytail. His eyes matched his hair, and he had a confident and strong look matching his build. Holy hottie. Oh, please, God let him be in our class. Mina spoke up as she looked at Izuku with a little smirk. All the others had to agree as they looked at him. He was by far the best looking they'd seen all day. He looked their way, and all the girls around blushed as they looked at him. He had an air about him as he took his key and put it in his pocket. He then pulled his backpack from a side bag and turned. When they saw his chest, a few girls around started to drool as they could make out his abs and large chest and shoulder muscles. He started to walk their way, and the girls all quickly patted down their skirts while Mina pushed her breasts up some, making her D-cups stand out a little more. She wanted to see if she could get his attention. As he got close, they heard him talking. Now, I just have to find Class 1A. The group was happy to hear that. After hearing that, Mina quickly rushed forward, the others following her. But when they got close, they noticed a few fading scars on his face to add to his looks. One went across his left cheek, and another went down from his right cheek to his jaw. Then she froze as he looked down at her, and a small smile formed on his face as he looked at her. She blushed as she looked up at him, and he spoke softly, making all the girls around him blush. Sorry to bother you, but do you know where the 1A classroom is? Mina, still blushing, nodded as she looked at him. Why yeah, we are in Class 1A. Izuku smiled a little wider and nodded as he looked at her. Thanks, sweetheart. Mina's face was nearly neon red as she looked up at him. Izuku laughed a little as he looked at her face and decided to have a little fun with her. He stepped closer and patted her side shoulder, making her snap out of it. Careful, sweetheart. You shouldn't space out like that. She licked her lips, her nerves becoming shaken, and then nodded as she grabbed his arm. Follow me. Izuku laughed as he let her lead the way. The other girls of Class 1A quickly followed after them. Other girls around them were jealous that Class 1A got such a hot boy in their class. Soon, Mina had dragged Izuku into a classroom. There was the rest of his class in the room. You all know who they are. Soon, they were sitting down, and the girls tried to surround Izuku, making most boys look at him. But Izuku knew the looks the girls were giving him. They looked at him like he was eye candy, and he did have to admit they were hot. All of them had at least a D-cup or bigger breasts with great figures. This also made him consider Toga's offer when they started dating. She'd offered to let him have side chicks if she approved of them. Toga had figured out he was a monster in his own right, and she understood she would always be his number one. So, she was happy to let him fuck another woman or woman as long as she stayed his number one. Izuku cleared his throat, getting all the girls' attention. He smiled as he spoke up. I just realized that we've been in this little group for almost an hour and I don't know any of your names. Be nice to have names, the names of such beauties. All the girls blushed, and they looked away. A few boys looked on, annoyed that one guy was getting all the girls' attention. But, he ignored them as he was thinking of which girl he was thinking of fucking first chance he could get. The first girl to speak up was the girl who dragged him here. I'm Mina Ashido. My quirk is acid. She was a 5'6" woman with pink skin and hair with yellow horns. Her eyes were black with yellow pupils. She had a set of D-cup breasts with wide hips with a bubble butt. Next was a girl with green hair and a tongue hanging out of her mouth. I'm Suyu Asui, quirk frog. She was a shorter girl, 5'4", with a relatively slender build and notably large hands. Her appearance is rather frog-like but still pretty. She has a wide mouth that dips down a little in the middle, just like a common frog, and oval-shaped eyes with large, black irises, their lower eyelashes visibly pronounced. She had double D-cup breasts with narrow but plump hips with a small but firm ass. Next to go was a brown-haired girl with permanent blush on her cheeks. I'm Ochako Uraraka, quirk 0 gravity. She was a short girl of 5'6" with a slender yet curvy figure, fair skin, and auburn hair with eyes that matched in color. She has perpetual pink blush marks on her cheeks, and her eyes are large and round with thick upper lashes, 2 more extended and more prominent ones on either side and fewer but more individually pronounced lower lashes. Her hair is shoulder length with short bangs, and the style is bobbed with 2 long strands framing her face. She was a little on the chubby side with a D-cup breast, a heart-shaped ass, and fatter hips. I'm Kyoka Jiro, quirk earphones. Kyoka is a petite 5'5", fair-skinned girl with a slender build. She has triangular onyx eyes with notably long lower eyelashes and small eyebrows. Her dark purple hair is chin-length, with an asymmetrical fringe with 2 reflections shaped like sound waves on either side. Her most prominent features are the flexible, plug-like earphone jacks hanging from each earlobe. They act like extra limbs that she can control and change their length if desired. She was the smallest, with a chest more on the size of a large triple C up chest with a figure you'd see on most girls. Nothing stood out physically, but she had a good air around her. I'm Toru Hagakuri, quirk invisibility. Toru is a reasonably short girl, the same as Kyoka, with a completely invisible body. She is only identifiable through held or worn objects, like clothing and accessories. But he could see there was a D-cup, but Izuku couldn't tell her hip size or ass. I'm Yaoyorozu Momo, quirk creation. Izuku looked at Momo, a tall teenage girl with a mature physique. She has long black hair, generally tied into a spiky ponytail with a large strand hanging on the right side of her face. Her eyes are big yet sharp, dark in color, and paired with short eyebrows set in a determined expression. But she was the most developed of all the girls in the class with a double E-cup breast, a perfect set of hips, and an ass that looked like the perfect bubble butt you'd just love to slap while having sex. Izuku smiled at them, having long since mastered cheeking a girl out in just a few seconds. I'm Izuku Midoriya, quirk Shadow Monarch. They all looked at him, confused, until he raised his hand and waved it down. A blue-green screen appeared in the air. Level 42. HP 10,980. STR 750. MP 3310. Bit 489. AGL 392. Int 410. Sense 900. Available points 18. Skills. Dash level 5. Crushing blow level 4. Cutting rush level 6. Vital strike level 4. Fatal strike level 9. Mana manipulation 10. All the girls looked at the screen, and Mina was the first to talk again. Your work works like a video game. So these are your levels, skills, and stats. Izuku nodded, having everyone's attention now, even the teacher who'd walked in and saw a quirk he'd never seen before. That's not the only thing I can do. Now that I can test this quirk to a real-world test, it won't hurt to show most of everything. Everyone watched as he went to punch the air, and to their shock, a blood-red sword appeared in his hand in a white flash of light. Then he changed it to a dagger, a hammer, a spear, and a bottle appeared in his hand. I also have recovery items and inventory space where I seem to have a limitless space. I have another set of skills, but I don't think it is safe to use them here. Everyone looked at him as he shared. The teacher cleared his throat. He decided the fear tactics wouldn't work, as the shock factor wasn't with him this time. Once he had all their attention, he spoke up. I'm Shota Aizawa, the pro hero known as Eraser Head. Now, all of you go and get changed, then head to the training field. Izuku Midoriya, will you talk with me for a second? The rest of the class moved out, and the girls were the last to leave. Izuku smirked as he watched them all go. Soon, the only two left in the room were Izuku and Aizawa. Izuku hummed as he looked at him. Izuku walked over and looked down at him. Then, he activated his quirk as he looked at him. Try and use your quirk. Izuku, knowing his power, decided to laugh as he stood up. Aizawa did not know why he was laughing. Haha. Okay, I'll play your games. Then, to Aizawa's shock, Izuku summoned his favorite sword and leaned down to look into Aizawa's eyes. I know your game, Eraser Head. Trying to use fear to control or threats to make us act a certain way. Just know that games ends now because you're the weaker and less scary of the two of us. Izuku smiled as he said his piece, then stood back up and left the room. Aizawa watched him as he walked, a smile forming on his face as he looked at Izuku's back. This kid, out of the training field. Izuku walked out last, dressed in the UA gym clothes with the zipper down, showing that he was still wearing the white shirt. Once on the field, he released his aura to see the other reaction. It had an intimate response. He saw everyone going stiff, even Aizawa, as he walked up to them. And many noticed his eyes had turned from green to a purple, sending shivers of fear down the back of the men seeing the power in those eyes. But the girls felt excitement as they saw the power in his eyes. Especially Asui, her animal quirk was driving her to get close to a strong male. It got worse as he stood beside her, and she could feel the power coming from him. She pushed her thighs together, trying to stop her body's reaction. Izuku, could you pull back on whatever you're doing? Izuku blinked, looked at Aizawa, and smiled as the power slowed and faded away. He laughed and rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, sorry. When I let my mind wander, I lose a little control, and my power flares up. Ever since I broke through level 30, my stats tripled, and when I heard the title Shadow Monarch, it just got harder to control. I'll hold tighter to the reins. Aizawa sweated a little as his body tried to recover from the fear he just felt. He was also quickly making plans since his quirk didn't work on Izuku's. He may need to form a response team if this kid decides one of his classmates is annoying him. Aizawa then looked at the rest of the class and saw two opposite responses. The boys looked terrified and were shaking in fear, and the girls were blushing and sweating. All of them were giving Izuku side glances with more than a few clenched fists. Then Aizawa noticed Asui and realized that her quirk was animal-like. Her face was a bright red, and she had a look of lust in her eyes as she tried to stare a hole in the ground. He also noticed her thighs ripping together, and Aizawa's eye twitched as he looked at the girl. If Izuku's grip on his reins loosened again or if his mind had wandered any long, the girls may have jumped on him. Then Asui raised her hand. See, can I go to the bathroom? Aizawa nodded and she thanked him before she quickly rushed off. Everyone watched her running, and Izuku noticed a small wet patch on the ground where she'd been standing. Izuku hummed as he had found the first of his prey at this school. Everyone waited for Asui to return, and Izuku walked over to a stone fence. Izuku sat down and leaned into it. He sighed before Aizawa spoke up. Izuku, keep your mind on something. I don't want a repeat of what just happened. Izuku looked at him, and then a smile crossed his face. He stood up and cracked his knuckles as he looked at him. How about a spar fight? I haven't been in a good fight for at least a month. Plus, the villain that attacked me was a wimp who didn't last 3 hits. Aizawa's eyes widened again, then narrowed, shocked one of his students was already fighting villains. Who is this kid? But Aizawa nodded, seeing a chance to see if he could do it. Why not? But, let's try not to hurt each other too much. Izuku smiled as he threw a knife up in the air. Aizawa activated his quirk and glared at Izuku. Izuku smiled as he got into his melee stance. Aizawa saw his stance and smiled, seeing one of his students like to fight like he did. The knife landed, and they lunged at each other. Aizawa threw out his capture scarf at Izuku. Izuku smirked, then vanished, and the ground under the ground where he was destroyed, leaving a crater. Then Izuku reappeared beside Aizawa. Izuku slammed a punch into Aizawa's side, and Izuku used his weight. His fist sunk into Aizawa's side, and the force sent him across the field. But Aizawa managed to land and come to a sliding stop. He coughed as he grabbed his side and looked back up at Izuku. He couldn't believe a kid had just sent him flying. He was about to move, but Izuku again appeared before him. Aizawa couldn't fight back as Izuku started beating him around the field. All Aizawa could do was try and dodge or block the attacks. With the students. This is insane. Momo yelled as she watched the pro hero getting his ass kicked around by a student on the first day. But her mind then went back to what had happened not a few minutes ago. Then she felt that energy in the air again, but much stronger this time. Her body started heating up, and she bit her lower lip. What is going on? Momo turned around and froze as she looked at the number 1 hero, All Might and Asui, behind them. Momo turned back around and saw Aizawa flying through the air. He crashed back down, slid along the ground, and slammed his back into the school. Then she and all the other girls looked at Izuku and saw his eyes glowing purple, and he was untouched. He smiled as he punched the air a few more times, then did a roundhouse kick in their direction. A massive blast of wind slammed into them, and even All Might was caught off guard. All Might moved to stand in front of the students once the wind was gone. He then started walking towards Izuku, and Momo and the other girls watched, scared for Izuku. Alright, young man, you've had your fun. Now, I saw this was a match Aizawa agreed to, but you went too far. Izuku laughed as he looked at All Might. All Might readied himself in case Izuku decided he still wanted to fight. Izuku put his hands in his pockets, and his smile sent shivers up or down the people's spines. The girls were all blushing as their bodies reacted to the power and dominance Izuku was giving off. Their female bodies react to many millennium-old instances of the opposite sex. Their instances started to scream as they recognized a male that had it all. The fitness and power to protect them, the presence to scare off any threat that did try to attack, and an attractive body. He was tall, strong, and handsome with scars that screamed he was a born fighter. Okay. I know when I've pushed a little too far, number 1. But I wish it was Mirko who'd stepped in a hero I could actually respect. Not some fool who thinks villains should be locked up instead of killed. A real hero who knows that not day is promised. That seemed to throw All Might off as the energy in the air faded away again. Izuku turned his back on All Might and summoned a weak-grade healing potion he'd purchased in the shop as he started to walk toward Aizawa. But, now I guess Eraserhead has my respect now too. He had the stones to stand up and fight me head on, not watch like a coward. Izuku stopped, kneeled, and lifted the barely conscious teacher by his shoulder. He popped the top and put the bottle to his mouth. Drink this slowly. Doing as he was told. Everyone watched as Aizawa's wounds healed, and he sat up with a green, goldish glow. Izuku helped him up to his feet, and Aizawa frowned as the bottle shattered into light. Izuku smiled as he patted Aizawa's shoulder. You've got my respect, and as long as it doesn't threaten mine or anybody else's life, I'll follow your rules and order without a complaint. Aizawa looked at Izuku for a few seconds, then laughed a little. Okay, Izuku, you're free to sit out for the rest of the class. I was going to test your and your class's quirks capabilities. But, I can tell you're the strongest of the first years. You may be even stronger than some of the second and third years. Izuku laughed and nodded, then walked past All Might, ignoring the number 1. He sat down on the stone fence and looked at everyone. But the girl also noticed that he looked at Asui the longest. She blushed as she looked away from Izuku, not wanting to meet his gaze. Then he saw All Might looking at him. Izuku balled his fist as he looked at the number 1. Izuku wanted a shadow like All Might in his army, but right now, he knew he had no chance of killing All Might, even with his elite Knight Igris. He knew he'd have to be at least level 80 to stand a chance at that feat. He looked back at the students as he watched his classmates but noticed All Might coming his way. Izuku was ready to pull Raisin's blade sword from the inventory. That was quite impressive, young man, and a dual quirk quiet. One that enhances your fighting abilities and then one that allows you to heal. Izuku hummed as he looked at him, keeping quiet, not wanting All Might's eyes even more on him. It would make it even harder for him to kill and take his shadow. All Might, leave the boy alone. I just got my ass kicked to earn the boy's respect. So I don't want you going and getting him riled back up. Izuku and All Might looked at Aizawa as the class went through the course. Izuku felt a little more respect for them. Aizawa then looked at Izuku. Izuku, you're free to go to what did you call them? A dungeon. Izuku smiled as everyone stopped to look at him. And here I thought this school would be only a little entertaining. I can clear an E-rank dungeon in about 30 minutes. Aizawa nodded as he looked at him. If you go now, then you should be out by the time we need to head back to the classroom. Izuku nodded, jumped up, and summoned an E-rank key in Raisin's blade. All Might jumped back, seeing the sword. Then I'll finish off the boss as fast as possible. Izuku raised the key into the air and turned it. In a flash of bright light, a large, bright blue portal opened in front of him. The key in his hand shattered as a strong wind came from the gate. Izuku smirked as he walked into the gate. Young man, wait. Izuku ignored All Might as the gate closed behind him. He smiled as he summoned Igris and rested his sword on his shoulder. Let's get this done, Igris. I have a group of girls to make weak at the knees. And, before we leave, I'm going to thin out the army. I think I'll only keep the 40 humanoid I have. Let's see, I think it was 20 knights, 13 mages and 7 assassins. I'll keep the villain too, but keep the hidden for a while. As you wish, my king. Izuku still hadn't gotten used to Igris' echo-like voice. Izuku and Igris both started to run as a large group of goblins. If we run into one of those giant black wolf's bosses again, I'm so taking its shadow. It'd also be funny to see their face if I walked out with one. I will do my best to aid you, my king. 3 minutes later, everyone waited on Izuku, having already finished the tests and were waiting for the portal to reopen. Most of the school had come out after seeing the gate, and the teachers started panicking after he wasn't back in 30 minutes. Principal Nezu was already trying to find a way to explain to the mother why her son wasn't coming home. Just as he was about to leave the field, a bright light blinded everyone. Everyone looked back as Izuku came out with something following him. The second he was out in the open, all the teachers were ready to charge as a massive blue and black wolf-like beast followed him out. Its eyes burned with power. Then, to everyone's shock, Izuku looked back at the wolf. Lay down, spirit. To everyone's shock, the giant wolf did as Izuku ordered and laid down behind him. Izuku laughed as the wolf moved its head and nuzzled Izuku's arm and side of his chest. Izuku laughed as he reached up and patted the wolf's muzzle. The giant wolf's tail waged as Izuku ran his hand down its fur. Izuku. Izuku looked over and saw Aizawa walking up to him. Yeah. Aizawa didn't fail to notice the wolf was watching him but showed no sign of aggression. The other teacher, seeing that, also approached some of the students and walked towards him. Aizawa spoke as he pointed to the large wolf. Is that thing safe? Izuku laughed before he spoke up while petting his wolf. She's tame and won't attack unless I give the order. She just became a new member of my shadow army. Aizawa hummed as he looked at him. Shadow army. Izuku froze, realizing he had just fucked up but knew he couldn't get away with it now. Izuku sighed before he leaned back into his she-wolf. When I hit level 40 I went through something called a class change dungeon that allowed me to become a necromancer. Then my class evolved into the Shadow Monarch after defeating an A-rank knight monster that I added to my shadow army. Damn thing nearly killed me when we fought. Izuku then pointed to his face. He's the one that gave me the scars on my face. I nearly lost me head twice to him in that fight. Young man. Izuku looked down at some kind of animal as he walked up and held a paw up. Yes. I'm Principal Nezu. Now when you say necromancer do you mean as in bring the dead back to life to fight for you? Izuku nodded a no to him. No. I gave up the necromancer class to take on the Shadow Monarch class. The Shadow Monarch can create armies of walking shadow corpses through elite shadow necromancy. It makes A even stronger once resurrected. My Shadow Monarch title has several other abilities, including enhanced physical abilities, like strength, speed, and regeneration, which are superhuman. Even if the shadow soldier's body is destroyed it can reform and keep attacking. Detection can sense the presence and location of other beings, including humans and monsters. This ability helps me navigate dungeons and avoid threats. Camouflage or stealth can erase his shape, sound, spell, and aura. It's a lot like invisibility, and that's about all I know so far. My quirk also allows me to learn a seemingly endless number of skills and abilities, but Shadow Monarch is by far my strongest. Then there are the dungeon and the daily quest that help boost my stats, making me even more powerful. Everyone was frozen as they looked at him. The teacher and principal understood that if his quirk allowed him to do all that, his potential growth was basicity endless. Hey Izuku. If you have an army can we see them ribbit? Izuku looked at Asui and decided this would help him get her later. Sure. I don't see why not. Izuku slammed his hand on the ground, and two massive dark portals formed in the group. Armored shadow knights, mages, and assassins all rose, with one standing out more than the other. The strongest of them all right now is Igris. He is that tall shadow soldier taking the appearance of a knight commander. He's the dark and purple color due to being a shadow revived by the power of the Shadow Monarch. He was an elite dungeon boss and is the one who nearly killed me about a year ago. Once the shadow on the ground faded away, everyone rushed forward. They touched the foot soldiers, but everyone jumped away as Igris moved and approached Izuku, sword in hand. Once he stood before him, Igris kneeled and laid his sword on the ground. He bowed his head to Izuku. My king, what are our orders? Everyone was shocked when they heard a shadow-looking knight talking. The teachers were also scared, as they'd never had a student who could fight them all at once if he wanted to. See, can I ask something? Izuku looked over to Ochako as she spoke in a shaky voice. Sure. She pointed to Igris and spoke again. Just how strong is Knight if he's the strongest? And how do you compare to him now? Well, he got a power boost when he became one of my soldiers. Let me think. He was an A rank, so I would put him at a solid S rank now if I compared him to our current top 10 heroes. Izuku crossed his arms as though he sat there for a minute. I guess Igris, if I gave the order to hold back, could easily defeat all the top heroes in 20 minutes except All Might. It'd take Igris 3 hours to defeat All Might with all his enhanced abilities. As for myself, I'm just a bit stronger than Igris given I beat him, but I can't stand up to the top 3s I am now given I lack the Shadow Soldier's abilities. Izuku was lying, but they got to give them some hope. That sent a shiver of fear. Now, even All Might looked at Igris and Izuku with an apprehensive look. Aizawa then asked a question he had thought of. Izuku, what happens if you die? Izuku hummed as he shrugged. Don't know, but I guess it's one of two things. My shadows would vanish, or they may run wild if I die in a dungeon. With my soldiers in this world, I seriously doubt there is a foe that could overpower me and Igris if we fought together, not to mention the rest of my soldiers and those I can gather from dungeons. But, then I need to think about my leveling system too. I don't know if I have a cap or if my shadows can level up or evolve like some monsters do in games. I see. Izuku, I think your quirk is a super mutation quirk. Izuku looked at the principal as he looked at him with a glint in his eye. Izuku didn't like the look in his eyes. Why do I not like that look in your eyes? The mouse bear thing smiled as he looked at Izuku. Of the monster I have on my paws, I'll see to it you make an incredible hero. Izuku gulped as he swore he saw an evil smile on his face. Soldiers fall back to the shadow space. The king will run and hide from the crazy mouse thing. After saying that, Izuku jumped away. Nezu smiled as he watched the ground crater as he ran away at such an incredible speed. Nezu let out a crazed laugh as he watched a monster that looked like a boy run. Heroes chase that boy down and drag him back. School's not over yet, but many of them missed how the Class 1A girls watched Izuku running. End of the day. Izuku sighed as he walked out of the school. Still pissed All Might had chased his down across 15 city blocks. Ribbit. Izuku, can I talk to you? Izuku hummed as he turned and looked at her. What up, little lady? Asui blushed as she looked up at him. Do you think you can give me a lift home? By the time I get to the train station, I'll have missed my train. I'd rather not have to wait an hour for the next one. I need to get home to make dinner for my little brother and sister. Izuku was surprised, as he figured he'd have to wait to get her on his bike. But he was glad to have the opportunity, as he did have a set of brainwashing artifacts in his inventory. Well, what direction do I need to take you? Ribbit. My family lives in the east of Musudafu. Izuku was surprised as he lived in the south of Musudafu. Well damn. I left in the south of Musudafu, so sure I can give you a ride home, but you really shouldn't ride in a skirt. Asui nodded and pulled her shirt up a little. Izuku blushed as he saw some black shorts on. Izuku nodded, and they quickly walked over to his bike. Izuku had noticed all the other girls in the class watching them from a ground floor window. He saw a few with annoyed looks on their faces. Izuku, acting like he hadn't noticed, started the bike and drove out of the parking lot. While he drove, he slowly increased his power and soon felt Asui breathing into his back and moving her legs around. Izuku knew exactly what he was doing to her and hoped that he could get her alone for just a few minutes to get the necklace on her. Soon, she directed him to a nice-looking two-story house. Asui quickly got off the back and told him where to park and then come in. Izuku quickly did, and he followed the blushing Asui into the house. Asui pulled him to the living room, and Izuku saw two younger kids. A boy and girl looked much like Asui, with frog-like features and the same green hair. Ribbit. I'm home. Samadare. Satsuki, we have a guest, so be nice. I need to go and get changed. Asui quickly ran off, leaving Izuku with the two kids. He blinked as they looked, then put his hands in his pockets and leaned back against a wall. They waited there for a few minutes until Izuku heard footsteps again. Then, the little girl, Satsuki, Izuku's guest, spoke up with a smirk as her sister stepped off the last step. Are you her big sister boyfriend? Satsuki. Asui was bright red now, and Izuku laughed a little as he looked at her and then back at the little girl. No honey, I'm not, thought she is very pretty. Asui started to turn neon red and then rushed off to the kitchen. Izuku and the kids laughed as she ribbited in the kitchen. Izuku nodded, then looked at the kids and pulled out some cash. He walked over and held it out to the boy. Can you go to the store by yourselves? They nodded as they looked up at him. Yeah, there is a small convent store just around the corner. If we take our bike, it talked about 20 minutes. Izuku smiled and spoke. Go get some treats, I think they tortured your sister enough. They laughed and then made kissy faces as they looked at him. Then Samadare smiled as they got up from the small table. Don't go to crazy. Izuku laughed as they rushed to the door. Once she heard the door close, she entered the kitchen and saw Asui trying to focus on cooking. Izuku, knowing he was close to making her break, walked up beside her and put a hand on her shoulder. She jumped, and her face was still red. He knew she'd heard him talking to the kids and decided to talk to her before he pulled the necklace. You can relax, Asui. I'm not someone who'd do anything to anyone they don't want. Asui seemed to calm down a little and she turned and looked at him. Well, at least you're nice to my siblings. Izuku nodded as he leaned against the counter. Yeah, I really don't mind kids as long as they don't throw stuff at me. Asui laughed a little as she turned back and started to cut the veggies again. If you meet Samadare a few years ago, you'd be dodging toy cars. Izuku smirked, then decided to start his attack. So, Asui, why did you let me into your home on the first day you met me? Asui stopped, and then he saw her thighs rubbing together again before she turned back around. She was still blushing as she looked at him, and she looked away. Ribbit. Well, I like how your power makes me feel. Izuku wasn't expecting that response. He blinked and then nodded as he looked at her. Well, the way you and the other reacted, I thought it was a fear response. I mean that how the monsters in the dungeon react when my power flares. Asui blushed as she spoke. Well, that's not how it makes me feel. I would like to nice if we could hang out more. Izuku, seeing his chance, summoned a necklace. The chain was made of bronze with a large green gem. It was a small one that most women would love to get from a man. If that's what you want, then wear this. It will allow you to talk to me through my shadows. It's also an artifact with a B rank cold blocking effect. Asui looked at the necklace, blushing, and then turned and moved her hair out of the way. Izuku smiled as he walked over, and once the necklace was won, Asui's body went stiff before her eyes became dead as she stood there. Izuku was happy to have a chance to test this item finally. Asui, turn and face me. Asui did as she was told. He knew he just had to set conditions. Once that was done, the effect would be permanent even if she or someone removed the necklace. She would act normal around everyone and nobody would see any difference in her acts or behavior. Let's see, I can set 3 rules that she'll follow no matter what. Izuku thought about it for a few minutes until he had what he wanted. First, Asui, you will always side with me and follow whatever I tell you without question. Second, you listen to my bloody queen Toga if she ever orders you to do something. Lastly, you will become one of my women and love me without question. Once Izuku was done, Asui's eyes returned to normal, but she looked at Izuku with a loving gaze. Izuku-kun. Izuku smiled as he pulled her into a hug. He was well on his way to making his harem.